Hey there, Squirrel Army. How's it going? For today, I want to discuss complaining about ghostly prison style effects.
You can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing.
Alrighty, guys. So, ghostly prison and other propaganda sort of things are one of those things that are in the format, and I think that they're perfectly fine and valid in the format. I am a person who plays combat decks, mostly. Like, that is where I've been playing pretty much the entire time that I've been in Magic. I always think that, you know, I always look at like my decks being combat oriented because it's just so much easier for me in my little squirrel brain to kind of process the combat step as like, this is my goalpost to win. I have to knock your life total down to zero. That's what I've got to do. So I've got to turn my creature sideways and bop you in the combat step. That's pretty easy. Like, again, like, I don't just play I tap my stuff sideways anymore, but I do mainly play on the idea that I will attack people for the most part to win. Like, I do have a few decks, and most of my decks now, that have other ways to sort of add additional range effectively to the deck, so I'm not 100% reliant on just going to the combat step and turning things sideways. And I think that that's why some people sort of complain about these ghostly prison style of effects and whatnot, but I don't think the ghostly prison's like that big of a deal. Like, paying 2 mana to have to attack somebody isn't that huge of a deal, and I don't think you need to suddenly just start targeting them because now it's somewhat harder to attack them or whatever. Um, because I've been in that position as well, like with the Pillow 40 style decks. I haven't played a lot of them. A lot of the decks that I have, like, mainly like Enchantress style decks. But a lot of decks, I think, want a Ghostly Prison style of an effect somewhere in your deck because, like, it's just so good to run those sorts of effects because, again, most people are going to be, like, doing combat damage to you at some points in the game, especially if you're facing off against Voltron decks, and that can just save your life from time to time, especially when it's attached to a creature that has some pretty significant defenses and whatnot. That those, like, I always try to prioritize the ghostly prison effects to be on creatures because, again, I'm mad about creatures and whatnot, but they do another job. They can also block. So if somebody does attack you and their attacker is just that little bit too small, well, I can just chump it. Or if it's really big, well, hopefully I can chump it. Or, if it will actually kill me, well, I can just chump it. Like, again, like, there's always that. I think, like, effects that are like, you know, ghosty prison propaganda, that sort of style effect is just 100% fine. Like, I don't see people complaining too much about people looping Spore Frog over and over again, and that can be really annoying, or like in those more Drother and whatnot, Marin decks, etc., those style of decks, but you can loop them in pretty much any deck that has some amount of recursion, and it can still be really, really annoying. Like, I don't really see that many people complaining like about Mazavith and things like that, because that's, often just better than, having, a ghostly present, because you're probably gonna, be worried about one or two big creatures for the most part, for most of the game. So, like, yeah, you're not really going to worry if somebody's going to just attack you with one or two big things, and you're just like, okay, I Mazavith it, whatever, bye bye, bye bye to that attack. Because I think, like, things like Mazavith and that are much more annoying than somebody running a propaganda or a ghostly prison style of an effect. But I've seen people complain about, like, these sorts of effects and say, oh, it takes away, the ability that you have to interact in a certain step, which is a major factor of a lot of people's decks. Like, and I agree in a sense that it does slow that down, but that's it. It doesn't take it away. It doesn't say you can't go to combat or you can't attack. Like things like Peacekeeper or Moat or whatever else, those say you can't go to combat or you can't deal combat damage or whatever, those sorts of things. There's that enchantment. I was thinking of another one, but Island Sanctuary is one of these ones that, you just basically can't attack them. And that, it was Solitary Confinement. I couldn't think of the card, but whatever. Yes, it does have some downsides, but again, it's one of those cards that you just, prevent everything that would happen to you for 3 turns. Even your turn, I guess, as well. So even if somebody goes to Lightning Bolt you or whatever during your turn, you still be like, oh, well, Solitary Confinement, that doesn't happen. So, there's way more cards that I'd be way more worried about somebody having than, Ghostly Prison or Propaganda or just same thing on a creature or whatever it is. There's just way worse. And I'd be complaining about those cards taking away your opportunities in combat, not Ghostly Prison, because Ghostly Prison doesn't, and those sorts of effects don't take away your ability to go to combat at all. They slow your combat down. That's it. They just slow down what you're doing. And that's for those people that are sitting there and going, dude, I'm just going to literally die, So I've been on that end of the stick, and you need to be on that end of the stick to realize why they're good and why people play them and that. It's not to just I'll be so funny and take away people's combats, because again, it doesn't actually take people's combats away at all. So there's you're just going, okay, if I'm in a situation where I need my opponents to not kill me for a couple of turns, or hopefully, I can play this out, put it on the field, and hopefully, I can draw into getting back into this game or whatever, that sort of thing. That's all they're there for. So, those people that are going, it's stopping me from killing you, well, that's kind of the point, because, if it's a player who, perhaps is known for a lot of chicanery or whatever, and they often just win or whatever, that sort of thing, then I can understand why you might want to kill that player and that sort of thing. And if they're just going to potentially win, if they get to sort of, play the game too much, then obviously, yes, that's another thing. But when it's somebody who's just going, dude, I've missed 6 land drops or whatever, or whatnot, or I haven't even got a creature, for 6 turns or whatever, and that sort of thing. All I've got is this Ghostly Prison that's just sitting there to protect me. It's no different than a creature that's just making you not be able to attack me with literally every single one of your creatures, or just slowing you down from attacking me. So I'm just sitting here trying to survive. That's all it's literally doing. So I don't see that as that bad, at all. And I wouldn't even attack that player unless it's literally down to 1v1 or whatever, for the most part. If it is the player who is the one player that everyone's sort of going, this guy, this guy. If you don't know the player, then it's a bit different as well. Then you're kind of going, well, what circumstances are they in? Like I sort of said, have they been sitting there not really doing anything this whole game? Okay, they haven't really done anything this whole game. It doesn't look like they're playing a combo deck. It doesn't look like they're going to win anytime soon. They just need some time to get back in this game, or actually get in this game at all, because they haven't basically been in this game the whole freaking game. So, you know what? That's fine. I'll just leave them alone, and maybe I'll attack them if they've got the Monarch, or if they've got the Initiative, or something like that. Or if it's, I need to hit them a little bit, at least to, draw a card or something else, or there's some benefit for you doing it, or, now it has come down to 1v1 or whatever, you're the last two players in the game. But at a certain point, you go, well, dude, this guy hasn't done shit in like 7 or 8 turns, whatever. I don't know. It depends what the circumstances is. But again, if they really haven't done anything in like so many turns, and you say, hey, do you have a board wipe? And they say, nah, I don't have a board wipe. Or if they say, oh, yeah, I do, but I don't have any mana to cast it. Whatever. I've missed all my land drops, so I just cannot cast it. You're just like, okay, dude, look, I can't kill you this turn or next turn maybe, but, like, do you want to drag this out? Because it's going to be 1v1, and I'm going to kill you unless you can frickin' wrath my board, or unless you can, set me back. And again, I'd complain more about people wrathing 4 or 5 times or whatever in a game, because that takes away more from your combats than, than somebody playing a Ghostly Prison or whatever, So I really don't think there's place to, complain about these cards. Like, yes, in some circumstances they can be annoying, and I've played against them, and they have been annoying, especially when it's on the player who's playing a bunch of Planeswalkers, and they're protecting all those Planeswalkers, and it's like, it was hard enough to try to deal with these Planeswalkers, let alone now I've got to pay 2 mana to attack the Planeswalkers, or should I just start attacking the player? But they often just have Atraxa, and Atraxa is just so difficult to attack through anyway, so you basically need to kill Atraxa every freaking turn so that you can actually attack into those Planeswalkers. And then they've still got the friggin' Ghostly Prison or whatever, not Ghostly Prison because that doesn't protect Planeswalkers, but you know what I mean, that sort of style and effect. They've got that thing that stops you from playing. Actually, there's that human that gives you the Monarch, which I think is really good, but players can't attack you unless they pay X, where X is the number of cards in their hand. So that's a really good one. I really like that one. It's really annoying to play against, obviously, as well. But still, it's really good because, like, you just drop down the Monarch and then you just start drawing cards at your every end step. And you're like, haha, no one can probably attack me unless somebody's playing, like, a deck where they're, intentionally, trying to get basically empty hand because, any more than 2 cards in hand or whatever, and everyone wants to draw cards as you go. You're always playing your Beast Whisperers to draw more cards or whatever to draw more cards. You don't want to go down below a certain number of cards, of course, unless you're in colors that don't have those style effects, and I think there's those style effects for whatever most decks are doing to an extent, so, or at least you have access to other cards or whatever. But still, like, it's one of those things you often don't want to just drop down to having almost no cards, because that's one of those big problems in the game, is just being like, cool, I deployed my stuff, but now I've basically got nothing in hand, and, I've got no real way to protect what I'm doing or recur what I'm doing that much. So again, I'm just going to be, once I do get set back, I'm just going to be done in this game, because again, I just don't have any way to keep the pressure on. And that's the problem. Like, if you have that Ghostly Prison and you can't sort of keep that, that pressure off you for long enough, it's like, well, what am I meant to do? Like, am I meant to just be like, oh, I concede just because you want to have more fun or whatever? That's not fun for me, like, when you're playing it, it's much more obvious, I think, to why these cards exist. I think a lot of these people that sort of complain about not being able to do anything and that sort of thing have a very limited deck. And that's something that I realized as well. My decks were fairly limited, and I go, damn, this is annoying. But instead of me sitting there and complaining and whatnot about it, I'd just go, well, I've got to find something else, or I've got to find more answers, or whatever. I've just got to, be able to win in other ways, or I've got to have a backup, or whatever, or I've just got to deal with it. Okay, I can only attack this person with a limited number of creatures. I can't attack them with all of my creatures. Now, in some circumstances, like I said, I might not even want to attack that person. Are they just sitting there basically doing nothing because they're missing their land drops, or they're only seemingly hitting the lands and not hitting anything else? So, like, they're not really doing anything. Like, it's that point, I don't care. Like, if they're the player that's, the main threat, then obviously it's a bit different, but I'm going to try to choose my battles and go, okay, well, I will attack them this turn, or whatever, with 2 creatures. In this turn, I might attack them with 1 creature, like, I might balance it out or start going, you know what, no, you're getting, like, if they're getting really ham, no, I'm sending as many things their way as what I can at certain points, obviously, as well. But again, it just depends, like, because I've got to protect my board state, or I've got to protect what I'm kind of trying to do. And at a certain point, there is no real point in advancing your board state sometimes. But when you have 7 cards in hand, you go, well, or more than 7 cards in hand, you go, well, I might as well deploy something, because otherwise I'm going to have more cards in hand than, what I can hold, unless you've got Relish Creek Tower or whatever else, that sort of thing. So, again, you've got to weigh up those things and say, right, well, I've got 8 cards in hand, or whatever it is, or if I cast this spell, I'll draw 2 cards, so that means I'll have 8 or 9 cards in hand, or whatever else it is. So, you've got to be going, is it worth me playing this? And, have I made my land drop for turn? Well, if I haven't made my land drop for turn, maybe I'll draw my land for turn, So it's not always just clean cut, well, I don't want to draw cards because otherwise I'll have to discard. I do want to draw, but I want to draw the right thing. So sometimes you're sitting there going, how likely am I to get a land? Well, I've missed my land drop for how many turns? Like 2 turns or something, whatever else it is. So I'm kind of somewhat likely to draw a land. So maybe I'll get it. Who knows? So you've got to try to always think about not just your own fun and whatnot, because again, they're not just playing that Ghostly Prison or propaganda or whatever else it is just to piss you off or whatever, or just, to be annoying. Like, if they're playing something like Peacekeeper or whatever, that sort of style of stuff, then obviously they're playing it to be a real deck or whatever, or whatever, because that really shuts off combats or moat or whatever else, those sorts of things, or Magus of the Moat or whatever. Or whatever, what's the blue fish that says only Island Walk and whatnot, Krakens or whatever else can attack, or flyers can attack, whatever else it is. I don't remember exactly the text right now, but whatever, you guys know what I'm talking about. But that sort of style of stuff, if you're playing that sort of style of stuff, then that really shuts down the combats. And that's the sort of thing, like, again, I think a lot of people have moved to wanting somewhat quicker games that move along at a pace and aren't just bogged down by people playing too many of these things, and that's fine. But when you're sitting there and going, well, what options do I have when, my deck really isn't doing the thing? And you could say, well, play more things that do more things. But, if I'm playing something that is a flyer that can attack, that also says, hey, don't attack me, please, I'm just a little boy over here right now, then I think that that's 100% fine. And as long as your deck's not overloaded on these sorts of style of cards, if you have 1 or 2 of them in your deck or whatever else it is, then that's fine. If you're, gonna clone it or whatever else, then that's something else. Like, you're going, well, I'm actually doing the thing that my deck's trying to do, so I'm just copying this thing to make it a little bit more difficult for people to attack me, or whatever, that's a bit different then, and you should be trying to get rid of the things that are, cloning those things, or get rid of the copies or whatever, so that you can attack them at a certain point too. So again, I don't see a problem. I have seen it be annoying, definitely, but I've been more annoyed by seeing other things more so than Ghostly Prison and those sorts of style effects. And I don't think that I lump them all in the same, like, boat, per se. Like, they do a similar sort of thing and whatnot. They prevent you from dealing as much damage as what you would normally do, I guess. But actually, they don't, because they're a limiter. Limiters are fine, I think. Like, again, people will say it's taxes. Yeah, that's fine, I think. Like, taxes is fine. Like, again, like, I've come back around to thinking that taxes is okay, like, especially when you're facing somebody who's just playing their Cranko deck and is just going absolutely ham and just made 1,000,000 goblins, and you're just like, they're going, cool, Ghostly Prison? Please don't attack me, or please pay 2 mana to attack me. Like, that's perfectly fair and reasonable if you're just sitting there and going, what? My decks are really slow. Like, again, or it's fairly slow, or it wants at least 1 or 2 of these effects, because that's a really good effect, because a lot of people will use combat to, do things like hit you, and, if it's opportune, or if you've got the Monarch, you've got the initiative, whatever. Or even just, again, I've got to reduce life totals, I don't have my combo or whatever, so I might as well just play the game like, oh, we're playing, battle cruiser style Magic, like, it's all about what's on your board and what creatures you have. That's why, again, like, the creature versions of these, in my opinion, are the best, because, again, you can attack with them, you can defend with them, all of that stuff. So there's a lot more to like about them. Being able to protect you, especially the flyers, and whatnot, because, again, people forget how good flying is and how good reach is when people have flyers and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, those are my thoughts on this right now, because I just wanted to address this, complaint some people have kind of had here and there. No, like, again, I've played against a lot of, like, these sorts of effects, and you're starting to go, well, cool. I'd much rather deal with, as I said, with, like, Propaganda, Ghostly Prison, those style of effects, rather than, Peacekeeper or whatever, those sorts of effects that just say you can't attack or whatever, or you can only attack with this creature or whatever, or, like goading is one of those things as well, that, you can't attack me with that creature unless it's 1v1 or whatever. Okay, that's fine. I'll just try and attack you with something else then, so, I think that's perfectly fine as well. Like, like, mass goading is a bit different. Like, again, that's, like, but usually, like, a lot of mass goading is, like, instant and sorcery based. There is a couple of cards that are, more permanent goading based or whatever. So, those can be annoying as well, but again, you've just got to find answers to those, like, again, so I would complain to some degree about those if it's like, well, shit, what am I meant to do? Like, whatever. Again, like, same with Spore Frog, as I said, I'd much rather play against Ghostly Prison than somebody just looping Spore Frog or whatever over and over, or Constant Mists. I even added Constant Mists to a couple of my decks and then went, you know what, I actually have another card that would work better in these colors, and I went, okay, these can go in another deck, because, those decks really need the help, and, it fits better within those decks. So you're always looking, like, you might be playtesting something, or it might be, like, again, a precon, you never know, and it might just be in the precon list, so somebody might just be playing it because it's in the list, or whatever. Again, or whatever, somebody made the list for them, and they're just, like, jamming, cards into sleeves and playing them, when they sort of think, oh, well, I'm in a bad position here, what am I meant to do? Well, here's this Ghostly Prison, maybe that'll slow people down from attacking me for a turn or two, or whatever. That's it, But anyway, I've rambled on long enough about this, and I know people don't really listen for too long in these things, but anyway, if you have listened this far, hope you have enjoyed. You can let me know your thoughts down there in the comments below if you did, and hope you'll join me again in the next one.